For developing countries, there are two things. On the one hand, they will suffer the most from the consequences of global warming. India in particular will suffer quite a bit from its consequences. On the other hand, we also need the relevant space, if we may use the word, for development. What does this space mean? Basically, it means that we need to be able to continue emissions of carbon dioxide for some time, because carbon-based fuels continue to be the most cheapest and the readiest means for development of industry, and will always be present when we increase our manufacturing, develop our services, and also develop our infrastructure. So why do we talk of it as a space? We talk of it as a space because if we take 1850, when the Industrial Revolution began, and if we take a year like say roughly 2050, okay, the amount of carbon dioxide that the world as a whole can emit over this entire period is finite. This number is somewhere around, the numbers are not so important, say roughly 650 billion tons of carbon. So this is a space. This is a resource, if you want to call it, or you just call it a space, a finite space. Now, the problem is that the developed countries have contributed far more than their fair share. And whichever way you can calculate fair share, there are slightly differing ways of calculating fair share. The most popular one, of course, is to calculate fair share based on a per capita share of this budget based on the population in a particular year. Their share in the population could be fixed if you take 2000 or 1990 as roughly 19 or 20% of the global population, the developed countries. But they have taken up so much of their, more than their share, that from now to 2050, the developing countries cannot even emit their fair share. Forget about emitting more than their share. They cannot even emit their fair share. So, you know, we have an entitlement to carbon space. The developed countries have exceeded their share, and we are somehow trying to maximize what we can get. So my talk here in the conference at the Devecha Center was, on the one hand, just briefly sketch this idea of why national shares of a global carbon budget are a good way to have equity in carbon mitigation, but also to point out that this is a good way to answer the demands of the Durban platform. You will recall that the Durban platform is an agreement where all countries are agreed there must be a global agreement by 2020. Obviously, countries like India think that this should be equitable, so do all developing countries. But nevertheless, this is an agreement which must be adhered to by all countries. So, what is a way to have an agreement covering all countries where everybody contributes, but everybody contributes a fair share of the effort at reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So our contention, and we have written about this in some detail in various places, is that really that this must be done on the basis of division of a global carbon budget amongst different nations on a per capita cumulative entitlement basis.